So we are live. We're going to be taking a few minutes, myself, Vanessa, and Dr. Angela Cotellessa, for this video to stream live on all our different groups at the same time. So it might take a minute for us to start. So if you begin on the live, if you just wait a few minutes while we get everything started, it'd be great. So we're just going to wait until the video appears in our feed, probably at the same time. Okay. Okay, so when it's here now, so I'm going to share in, can you check it from my group, Angela? Can you check it from, can you get it from my group?
Yep, let me see here.
Okay.
Yep, I see it in
I can even put it on your group if you'd like.
Sure, that would be great.
And I'm going to put it in Renaissance in case it works. Alrighty, so I have it on now. The only thing that we need is for you to put it on your own page. If I can
Would I share?
If you can share it on your page, let's see if, I don't think I can do that.
I could share to my group. Oh, I could share to my group.
I think I've already done that, so let's
Oh, you did already?
Yes,
okay.
But do it again anyway, just in
okay.
case. So I'm publishing on your group, so I think we should be good.
Okay.
All right, so we're off to start now.
All right.
So here we go.
Here we go.
Are you an artist of your life, or are you married to one? You're about to find out in this live that I'm going to be doing with Dr. Angela Meyers. We're going to be doing a wonderful live on polymaths. It sounds very complicated, but we'll go ahead and explain it to you. So basically, my question for you today, if you're listening to this live, is: Are your interests far and wide? And is it hard for you to focus on just one thing, maybe one career or maybe one activity? And are you like Doris, maybe from Finding Nemo, where you like something and then you move on to something else constantly and you're worried that maybe there's something wrong with you? Well, then you're definitely in the right place. So my name is Vanessa Calfan. Let me introduce myself. I guide women and their babies to recover from unhealthy relationships. And what I do is I use the medium of water that way to get the bond closer from the mom and the baby together, and to start basically flowing in their cells and flowing in their lives. And also use other healing practices that I've been using for the past 20 years. And I met Angela in this in a group where she'll be introducing you to what a polymath is, and I'll be telling you there's different terms for polymath. Another one is scanner. A different one would be Renaissance person, and multi-passionista is another one. So before I introduce Angela, for you to see what she does, I'm going to tell you a story, so that maybe you can relate to what a scanner or a polymath is. So this is a story of a woman who had a secret. She lived secluded in an area. It was in Finland, if I'm not correct. And she hid from everybody because she was worried that people would find out about the secret and harm her. And one day, this woman was, there were three women who came into her property, three men who came into her property. And she's kind of a tough cookie, so she took out a rifle and was about to shoot them. And as she was about to do that, there was this really scary, horrible noise that came from not too far away. And two of the men just froze. And the third one just kind of stopped and listened. It was very quiet. And then he said, I think your elephant might be hurt. It sounds like he has a splinter. And then he added, and I can help you with that. And she was so surprised, the woman, that she forgot to shoot them, basically. And so she led the men, to which ended up, yeah, absolutely an elephant with a splinter indeed. And he cured the elephant. And when she asked him, how did he know? He said he was an almost veterinarian. And she said, what is that, an almost veterinarian? And he explained that he didn't get his degree, but he's basically a veterinarian. And she said, well, how does that work? And so he told her that when he was in his teens, his uncle passed, and he was an avid lover of learning. So what he did was he inherited all his money to his nephews, only, and this is the interesting part, Angela, is only as long as they kept studying, because he loved learning so much. So the men's brother immediately took on, and I was a mechanic's job, apprentice, so he became a mechanic and blew all the money, from the inheritance, and just, had to live the rest of his life, seeing how to make do, And the other one, our character, the elephant guy, decided to go a different route. So what he did was he started studying for an architect. So he became really good at his studies and his practice. And then 2 credits short of graduating, he quit. And then he said, well, what do I do now? Let's try biochemical engineering. So he applied to a degree in biochemical engineering. And just like the first one, a few credits short, right before graduating, dropped out. He was still studying, so the money, was still coming to him, so he could still, get a stipend to study. And if you know where this is going, he kept going. He did something else. Then he studied interior design. He's very good at it. He was getting lots of clients. And then he said, oh, I'll just stop. So he quit, and then he became a veterinarian, which is where this story is taking us. I don't want to tell you the whole story, but he had all these degrees. All these learning experience, but no degrees really. And in the beginning of the book, he starts being a hot dog vendor because, he knows a lot, but he doesn't have any marketing skills. So, and the story is it's kind of funny because he doesn't have that many clients. He doesn't know exactly where to go. But, the 2 men who are with him are actually from a getaway car. So they decide to hire him, as a driver. That's how the whole story starts, with the elephant and things. So, we can talk about who the book is and talk about this later. And if somebody on the replay, actually, or even in the live knows the title of the book, they will get a freebie from you, Angela. They will get a free ebook that we'll be talking about what kind of free ebook it is. But back to our story, Angela. I wanted to ask you, this story that I was just telling you about, what do you think that person is, the man who kept, getting all these non-degrees? What is he? And especially, how does that relate to you and the talk we'll be having today? And then you can introduce yourself.
Well, gosh, between, architecture and the hot dogs and driver and biochemical engineering and interior design and all that good stuff, he sounds like a polymathic kind of guy. That a polymath, that word means someone with many learnings, basically. It's not about mathematics. People sometimes get confused about that. And like you said, Vanessa, other words for it are like a Renaissance man or woman, polyhistors, multi-potentialites, multi-passionistas, jacks of all trades. So those are words that are sort of grouped in the same category. They're not all the same, though. I would argue that polymath, also you mentioned scanner. Like I would say scanner is more like I dabble in lots of things without going very deep or committing deeply to anything necessarily. And a multi-potentialite, that's another word that some people use. To me, that implies I have lots of potential, but I think everyone has lots of potential. What do you do with it? Mm-hmm. Polymath, the reason I like that one is because it sort of does imply that you not only have breadth in what you know and what you've experienced and learned, but you have some depth too. And that's the way I want to be when I grow up. So that's the way I think of how polymathy is similar, but a little bit different from some of the other concepts. And I'll say, how does this connect to me and why am I here and why are we talking about it? Yeah. So I got my doctoral degree from George Washington University in 2018. And as part of that program, I had to, of course, do research, write a doctoral dissertation. And I wanted to study modern day polymaths. So I wrote, a dissertation, basically a book called In Pursuit of Polymaths, Understanding Renaissance Persons of the 21st Century. So I guess that's how the story relates to me, that guy, he didn't get those degrees. How lucky, by the way. Can I have that life? Can I just like go to school and learn indefinitely? That sounds really wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great life, and it gets better too afterwards. So without all this money.
So I'm passionate about this subject.
Okay, so this is why I invited you over, because I think a lot of us are polymaths, and sometimes feeling that there's so many things you like, and you feel like you have to focus on only one. For me, when I was in college, I decided on psychology because there's so many things to study, so it wasn't really a problem. But I know that for a lot of us is should I study this or should I study that, or would I be missing out? And I think that's kind of one of the things that we are worried about, is that we're missing out on something. And I don't know how that fits into your work and to how you feel about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I just want to address too how you said you had to pick a major, and our university system, like the further you go along in education, the more you're expected to specialize and narrow down, which I think is there's some real downsides to doing that. But regarding missing out, if you specialize, especially if you specialize at a young age, like you decide what you're going to be too early, you probably really will feel like you've missed out because you wouldn't have kind of shopped around, learned what your options are, figured out what really resonates and fits with you. So that is so important. You run the risk, especially as a younger person, if you specialize and commit to something too much too soon, you may end up investing a lot of time and into that, and then realizing, why did I do this? I really am passionate about something totally different. And so you can actually kind of be behind, where you could have been if you would have just let yourself have that sampling period. Another way that polymaths can feel like they're missing out is because they have so many interests, so many passions. They're so curious. They want to learn. But they're human beings with 24 hours in a day, and many of them are juggling jobs and they have to think about income and money. And so they don't necessarily have unlimited options to just pursue what they're curious about. They have to exist in the real world and they need sleep, and some more than others, but they've got to manage time. And so prioritizing interest, even as they shift, can be hard. So it can take what feels like discipline to kind of finish something sometimes, because you're just, you may start something and then want to go to something else. And there are benefits to finishing, there are benefits to finishing that degree, so that you can exist in this age of specialization with some amount of credibility, and so, it's not an easy journey. I would say if there's one thing I uncovered from my research, it's that there are pros and cons. There's challenges and advantages to being polymathic in this age of specialization, which says if you want to be, the dominant ideology says, if you want to be successful, specialize and hyper specialize, even specialize very deeply. And then society will reward you. You will be seen as expert, as capable, as competent. You'll make more money, all of that. But honestly, part of why I studied this topic is because I am this way myself. I like to learn. I like to experience. I like to explore. I also like to be really good at what I do. So I don't consider myself a scanner. I consider myself a polymathic kind of gal. But part of why I study this is because I think it's the natural way of being. It's our natural way of being. It's just for the sake of efficiency, we decided to kind of break up what we know into smaller bits, and any one person knows we know less about the overall set of knowledge, but we know more and more about less and less. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, we know a lot about siloed, specialized things because that's the age we live in, but it comes at a cost too, because then you don't really have people who have the bigger picture and who can make linkages. That's the advantage of being polymathic, by the way, is that, well, in addition to being more enriching for an individual life, to have the full human experience, if someone is polymathic and they have knowledge in multiple domains, then at the intersection of those domains, an opportunity for innovation and creativity. There's also certain ways of taking approaches, ways of thinking, tools from one field and then applying it in another field for the sake of innovation. And so, there are definite advantages for us to think about how having polymathic people in our midst and leveraging their talent and their capabilities is smart for the larger whole, not just for so it's at the individual level. People can benefit from exploring the fullness of their capacity and not squishing in a box or being a cog in a wheel quite so much. And it's also good for the whole, because it opens the door for creativity and innovation that can help the rest of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, finding out I'm a polymath gave me a lot of relief because I had this idea that I was a little bit scattered because there's so many things that I wanted to do, or that I did and I started and stopped. And one of the the person who coined the term scanner was Barbara Scher. And she had this wonderful quote, which really stayed with me, is, all of us have so many books that are half read, and we say, well, I haven't finished my book. I have 13 in line, and Barbara said one day, she said, well, what makes you think you haven't finished a book? And I kind of went, of course, I read all that I needed to read. And for some people, reading the whole book is important, but from others, you just get what you need out of it. And you build into something else, like you say, and into something else. And that way you build into a whole, kind of like a Venn diagram.
Yeah. Like you're finished with the book when you are finished based on what you needed to get from it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And there's one thing that has been said about hyper specialization, where, if you're a surgeon, you spend so many years, so that you're somebody, because you're specialized, as opposed to, being a polymath where you're generalized. And I was told a story as well that this had to do because of the Cold War, before the Cold War, we were all really good because we were trying all these different things, like Michelangelo, we were Mozart, everything we were being many things at the same time. And it was fine, But then when the Cold War came, then we had this problem where the Russians, came first. So, the United States as a country had to just kind of, get better so that they had to beat the Russians. And in that sense, they started saying that we have to do hyper specialization. So the real catch, the husbands were the people who were specializing in one area, instead of the other way around, where at first, at the beginning, in the 70s, it was more, learn as much as you can. Like, in psychology, get as many electives as you can. And suddenly with the Cold War, everything changed. Now we have to choose one lane, and so we become, a little more looking like this, instead of, like you say, being open and trying several things at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there have been different parts in history. Like, some people would say, oh, it was the Victorian era when the specialization, the shift towards specialization started happening. Or others would say, oh, well, Ford's assembly line, like that whole time frame is when we really started, appreciating specialization. The bottom line is, whenever it occurred, I mean, who knows for sure when that moment happened. But the bottom line is, at some point, a lot of information, a lot of activity descended upon us, a lot of challenges, and our way of coping with it was to create specialization, to be more efficient, to try to be more effective. But I feel like we're in a different world now. Like, tech has been a game changer. Tech relieves us of a lot of burden. Like, we don't have to memorize things as much, for example, because we can just Google it. We can just look it up. We can store it digitally. We don't have to know it necessarily. And so I think we're in this shift where specialization is the old model. It worked for a time. It helped us be efficient. But now, for a couple of reasons, I mean, I think there's a shift to people wanting to explore their inner polymathy because it gives you a more enriching life. You know, if you can explore and expand and experience and not be so siloed. And as people have, you know, as people have more resources and more freedom and more choice, like, of course, they're going to want to choose the way of living that feels most enriching and enjoyable. And polymathy can be that for a lot of people. Another reason why I think there's a shift towards not sticking to narrow specialization is because our world is just becoming too complex to keep doing that. Like, if we all are just with blinders on, that's not going to work. We need people who can innovate to address the difficult problems of our time. We can't just keep doing things today like we did yesterday. We need people who can synthesize and build bridges and integrate and be creative and innovative in new ways to address the difficulties of the modern world. So that old school model where we just are like simple specialist cogs and wheels, like, does that really work for a complex modern world? I don't think it does. Maybe we have a mix of specialists and polymathic people to solve our problems. We need both. And by the way, I would never say that specialists are bad or stupid or whatever. I think it's up to each person to decide how they live their life professionally and otherwise. And if specialization and really, really mastering one subject brings them joy, then go be a specialist. Do it. Hyper specialize, whatever brings you joy.
So my next question would be, Angela, how do you know if you're a polymath scanner, one of these third multi-passionista? How do you know? Like, to us, to people who are listening to us, you know, am I one of them? How do you know if I like a lot of things? Does that mean that I'm a polymath, or what is it?
I want to say too, polymathy exists on a spectrum. I would say the quintessential Renaissance man from history was Leonardo da Vinci. And he contributed in so many different fields. He was prodigious across an array of, arenas. But he's like the gold standard, the perfect polymath, right? The perfect Renaissance man. You don't have to be a Leonardo to consider yourself a polymath. And by the way, some people don't feel comfortable using the word polymath. I want to mention that. Some people feel like, oh, polymath, you only use that word if you're highly, highly accomplished in at least 2 or 3 fields, changing the world. And if there's anybody who doesn't feel comfortable using that word, I would suggest just instead of making it a noun, use an adjective, polymathic. Okay, if you don't want to say I'm a polymath, you could say I'm a polymathic woman. And then it's an adjective. But my point is, it exists on a spectrum. Okay, so knowing I'm a polymath or not, just keep in mind there is a range of how polymathic somebody can be, and that involves how much breadth and how much depth have you had professionally and otherwise. The hallmarks of being a polymath are a love of learning. I mean, the word literally means many learnings. And so if you love learning, that's a definite hallmark of being a polymathic person. So, and along with that, curiosity, also a kind of a sense of bravery, because we live in the age of specialization where there's so much pressure to pick one thing and be expert in that your whole life and don't stray. It takes someone with kind of a rebellious spirit and some bravery to choose an alternative path. So I would say, love of learning, curiosity, bravery, openness to experience. That's a real phenomenon, by the way, in human beings. Openness to experience has been studied and written about a lot in the academic literature. And so being open to experience is something that is very high in polymathic people. I would argue too, though, like whenever I hear like an academic talk about openness to experience, I just, as a real person, taking off my academic hat, I'm just like, isn't this just openness to life itself?
I know, it doesn't really mean anything, does it?
Like, what is life if not a bunch of experiences? And a polymath is being open to life. Like, I would argue a polymath is being all in at life. Like, I'm not going to limit my human experience based on the expectations of, or pressures of society. I'm going to be an artist and let my life be my art and curate my experiences thoughtfully. So that I can have the fullest human experience, reach my potential.
Yeah, so maybe it's you're still afraid of doing things, but you're still going to do it anyway,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
You want it so bad. Because as a polymath, you just want to learn. We have Barry who's here, who's listening to us. I think Barry is a polymath, and Barry, if you want to tell us about what you do and how do you qualify yourself as a polymath? We'd love to hear you, here in the comments. But I'll give you an example of that. Is I'm training with women and with babies, and there's this course that I want to take. It's in Brazil, and it's an online class, in the pool. So it's already kind of, you think it's kind of complicated, and it's going to be in Portuguese. And I don't speak Portuguese, but I think, I kind of have to go and leverage here my love of learning and my fear of not understanding what the hell this woman is saying, So there's a possibility that I won't be able to understand. I'm in Mexico, so Spanish, is similar, and Portuguese, the Brazilian Portuguese is softer than the Portuguese from Portugal. So, I'm thinking I'm probably going to get a chance of understanding, but it's a chance that I need to take, and as a polymath, I'd rather take the risk than not go, because I think, well, I'm not going to take the course, it's not in the language that I speak. So maybe that's one of the, of the, how to describe a polymath is your love of learning is like stronger than your fear of not getting it, not getting it right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's often like this not wanting to have regrets that you didn't do something or that you left something undone. And I just want to give you a shout out for, being brave enough to go try it. Even though you're going to be speaking Spanish and they're going to be speaking Portuguese. I have done that before, by the way. And I have had whole conversations speaking in Spanish and receiving in Portuguese and mostly being able to understand it. So yeah, that was fun.
So it's when you want to do it, right? When you want the result. Barry is asking us how does he speak? So Barry, because of the way this is run, you can do it on the comments. You can write in the comments here in the group and answer my question. And then next time we'll get you on live. But for now, we'll have it in the written form. So this takes us back to my next question, Angela. Is okay? We talked about the great things about the love of learning and, accepting yourself, for me, learning that I'm a polymath, it's helping me to be relieved, about the fact, but I studied so many things and I didn't really, stick to, the journalism or the psychology or I'm taking everything together, and the John Su, the water therapy and the biomusic therapy that I'm doing, I'm putting everything together, in order to put in a nice little package in order to go with my healing, with the healing I do, so that kind of makes me feel like all this time is not really wasted, even if you spent, so many years in one course and you say, oh, maybe that's not what I liked. But all this information, my polymathy mind is using it to be, used again later. So that's kind of, I think, one of the great things about it is in learning, I think even for specialized folks in learning, there's never anything wasted. There's no career wasted, because you're always going to use it sometime. And the minute you start worrying about when you're going to be able to use it, is when you get the chance to do it, you know?
Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, other people looking at your zigzag path may say, oh, those things don't go together at all. Like, you know, your resume is all over the place or whatever they would say. But I would guess, Vanessa, that for you, those things absolutely do go together because you're interested in them. They're in your toolkit. They are related to healing, you know, different modalities. And so I would, you know, I think there's a good lesson that polymaths remind us of is that, like, if you live your life caring too much about how other people will perceive you, then is that really even living? You know, isn't living about authoring your own story and taking ownership for it? So that's what I would argue.
Is that not the same for specialized as well?
Well, because we live in an age of specialization, they're kind of naturally accepted. You know, if they're specialists, experts, society says, "Oh yes, you did the right path. You did what you were expected to do, like a good girl." And so polymaths don't necessarily have that same, you know, appreciation. And a lot of times they actually get discriminated against professionally.
Yes, that was actually what I was getting at. That was my next question. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in college and the professor or whoever, the career center people would come meet with the students and tell us how to build a resume and how to match your resume to the job announcement, that very specific, narrow, specialized position. And to remove things, censor, delete off your resume, anything that did not pertain to that job. And so I was literally, and I'm guessing other people had similar advice given to them if they took any sort of class or anything about making a resume or interviewing for jobs, that you have to put on a mask to say I am an aero specialist and I do just what that job does, and that's it. And you don't talk about other things you've done. You don't even normally even talk about yourself as a human being with interests or hobbies or families or any of that. You just, you're professional and you need to be narrow and do what the job says. So we're taught to hide and censor parts of ourselves. It's such a bad way to start off a relationship with an employer, to hide and censor who you are. I look forward to the day when our society gets to the point where people can apply for jobs and bring their whole selves and all their talents and not have to censor and repress their full capabilities and prior experiences.
Absolutely. Barry says that no one can take away what you learn.
Exactly. It's a kind of power, and it's a kind of a wealth to have knowledge. I actually, when I finished my undergrad, I remember I had this stole and I had embroidered "knowledge is power." You know, that saying, knowledge is power. Yeah. Cause I thought that's so true. Like anything I learn it adds to my capability. It adds to my awareness. It's not detracting from me. And that's another essence of a polymath is I feel like, and no polymath said this to me, so I should say that. But as a researcher, part of what I did was I heard people's stories and then I tried to make sense of it. And so part of what I felt like polymaths were trying to do in how they experienced and lived their life in polymathic ways was this desire to expand, to reach potential, not shrink and shrivel, even if there was pressure to do that. There was this real like, no, I'm going to live my life fully and I'm going to author it and I'm going to be brave and I'm going to do with my life what feels right to me. So there's this sense I had of like, of stepping into their capacity and the fullness of it and not shriveling and shrinking and telling a lie. I
love that analogy of not shriveling, really in any aspects of your life. If you just open up, your talents were going to come and be used someplace. But if you go like this, then they're going to be kept inside, and no matter what area, even if it's in your family life, in your personal life, or in your job, they're going to be constricted and you're not going to be able to use them at all.
Yeah, I would think that would feel horrible too, to just feel like, oh, I have talent, but I'm not using it. That would be very frustrating to me. Or to have things I want to learn about, but feel like, oh, I can't do that because I have to be this neuro specialist forever. And again, some people, maybe that brings them great joy and they really do want to be specialists professionally. But for a lot of people, I don't think that's their natural tendency. I should point out too, that polymathy, it can show up professionally in what you do, what shows up on your resume, but you can also express it through your hobbies, through your avocations. You can juggle things at the same time. Or maybe you do something for a period of time and then you go to something. So you have seasons of polymathic, learning. It doesn't have to be at the same time. It can be simultaneously or serially, but it's really it's like a life project, to continue to learn, experience, expand, not shrivel and shrink. And so it could be in a professional setting. It could be with your interests outside of work. I really love the idea of polymathy outside of work. Like, I just love the idea of curating my experiences. And I know, Vanessa, you love to travel. You've lived in different countries and speak different languages. And I don't know, for you, that's an example of like being polymathic and exploring different cultures. I mean, how do you think it's enriched your life that you've experienced?
It's giving me some relief, I think, more than anything, because I've been in the Yucatan now, in the Caribbean, for 20 years. I was attracted by the sinkholes, the cenotes are called.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're underground caves. Remember we talked about those? Yeah. They're underground caves, and you can go and swim in crystalline water. And, that was just beautiful when I arrived. And I'm not saying it still hasn't lost its appeal. But it's just only one category, of living. And so I've been here now 20 years, and I said, well, 20 years is good, but I'd like to try something else. And I had this guilt of saying, well, again, you're going to uproot yourself and go someplace else again. Aren't you tired of this? And I realized that now, that understanding that I'm a polymath is that's part of who I am. Like, I have this part that wants to speak in Spanish and, be with Mexican people with their relaxedness of life and everything. But then I need some time to be with the part of the United States, where people like you, the way you think, the terms that you use, the different way of thinking. And that's kind of another place that I'd like to go. It's like going to a happy room,
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to another room. In my case, I'm French from my father's side. So I need to spend some time with the French mentality, with the French folks, travel to a place preferably. And then I changed, like even my voice changes in French. My tone gets like lower. And even the way I dress, the way I speak, I mean, everything, it changed. And it's like, it's not that I'm a chameleon, but it's just a way for me to be myself in different ways, not just one. Like, I feel that just being one way is constraining. And I had this feeling of, Vanessa, you're ungrateful of the country you're living in. You want to go someplace else, and I'm saying, well, tacos are good, but let other people have tacos. I'm ready for something else. I'm ready for some Cajun grill, for some, different things, and also goes with food. You can also do it with food. But I think, in my case, it's giving me so much relief to understand and therefore accept myself. And not just judge myself of saying, okay, well, what's next? Where are you going to go now? You're not going to be happy now. And it's not that. It's just that we as polymaths need an experience that's general and broad. And I know I'm going to get to Barry's messages right now. And I think Barry's also doing different things where we just need to do things. And I think that's a point that you raised, Angela, that's very important. No matter how successful those endeavors are, no matter if you make money or if you don't make money out of an activity, it's just tapping into a part of you that it's different from the previous one. And like we know the typical, if you're a math person, then you're a musician, that's kind of a given. But what about things that are completely different? Like, I don't know, one day you want to go and raise goats, and the next you want to work with children with difficulty, and they don't need to connect. They don't need to have a thread. I think the only thread here, and Barry, you will tell me if you agree with me, is the joy. It's the joy of just even thinking about doing something new. What do you feel, Angela?
Yeah, newness, change, variety. Those are all things that polymaths tend to prize. I love, by the way, that you said, be myself in different ways. You said that. And yeah, I kind of think of it like we each actually have kind of multiple selves within our self, within our one self, and different parts, and those may shift over time too. So the version of Vanessa that and all her parts and variety 10 years ago maybe isn't the same as the Vanessa now. Maybe you still have those versions inside of you, right? But I also want to say, I love how you are kind of gaining awareness, or you've gained awareness that this is like a thing. It's a way of being. It's natural. There's strengths of it. There's challenges with it. And you're kind of accepting yourself more instead of judging yourself. And that's what I hope will happen for more people. I mean, anyone watching this, I hope that they can have that similar journey of like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not alone. Oh, speaking of that, I want to give a plug. I have a group called Polymath Place, and there are other groups on Facebook too that do similar things, like the Multi-Passionista Tribe group. But
it's a great tribe.
Yeah, when I interviewed these polymathic people, I realized, oh man, these people feel very alone, and we don't talk about polymathy. Most people don't know the word. There's no place for them to go. So I created this group, and I created a YouTube channel too, because I felt for these people. Like, they're wonderful, capable, authentic individuals, and they're feeling bad about this in some ways and feeling alone. I also heard you say something about success, and I don't know, the way I think a polymath would think about success and failure is not learning would be a failure. Like, as long as you keep learning, you're happy. Like, one of my participants said that. Oh, I realized about myself, I'm happiest when I'm learning. That's what he said. Not trying is failure. Trying and exploring and expanding is success. Like, what makes a successful life for a polymathic person isn't necessarily society's version of what success looks like. It's their own version. And that would be experiencing, expanding, learning, trying, growing. That is success. And so life becomes a sort of artistic expression,
I like that. I like that. So let me get to see what Barry, the comments, what Terry was saying. He says, I believe polymathy is healthier when we're talking about hyper specialization. And he says, I found if I ride with a wave of my creative flow, the wave will take me where I want to go.
It rhymes too. That's how you know it's Barry, because he's going to write a poem about it and it will rhyme. Great job, Barry.
She's on to you, Barry. She's on to you. My fruit, he says, my fruit were the grapes of math.
Yep. He has shared that with me before in one of our meetups. Yeah. He likes to write poetry. He likes to paint. He does yoga, and he's retired. I mean, he had a whole career, and I think he's a great example of someone like even in retirement, like living life purposefully, finding his joy, doing it in his own way, right? In his own story.
He explains that a little bit further. He says, that makes the grapes wrath because I am an empath. I choose the vine to wine path who has the grapes of a polymath rather than the vine to dine path who has the grapes of a monomath. That is another poem.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I never heard that term monomath. So thanks, Barry, for sharing that. It's interesting. And now, if I have to be honest, when I first read polymath, I saw math and I said, no, I don't like that. I'm not a math person. And because I had that resistance, Angela, is the reason why I went and listened to your live. Because I said, if you're acting this way, it's probably something for you that you're gonna gain out of it. I think if you have resistance someplace, I would say go towards it because it's something that it needs to teach you.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I like that.
And he says, I've discovered by painting where I want to go, I'm able to be what I want to be. What I want to be. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to read it again. I've discovered by painting where I want to go, I'm able to be what I want to be.
Beautiful.
So it's
thank you for sharing, Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I like that. So painting is one way to do it. So the next question for you guys who now are thinking, maybe I'm a polymath, or maybe my hubby is. And, I was always trying to get him to do one thing, and it turns out, he's a jack of all trades. But here's my next question. What about if you realize that your children, Angela, are polymaths? If you're not a polymath, how do you help them? How do you guide them? How do you put them, which guardrails do you give your children if you think there's a possibility that there might be, multi-passionista, multi-passionate children?
Yeah. I would guess most kids are that way. And we get it trained out of us as we age.
That's true.
But most children are curious. They're just sponges. They're just learning, and they want to try lots of things. Like, I don't know that I've ever met a child who wasn't that way. Now, does that make them like an accomplished, achieved polymath? No, I mean, it's just they have a polymathic nature, probably right from the start, even as children. And I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and here's what I do. And by the way, when I spoke to the people who I interviewed, in the research I did, a lot of them spoke about their childhood. So I'm also sort of pulling from their stories. But and actually, let me start there. Some polymaths as kids had really supportive environments. And it seemed like the most supportive environment was the child realizes they have an interest. They realize they want to learn about something. Maybe the parents present some options and the kid says, oh yeah, that looks good. And the parents let the child's interest lead more than as opposed to the parents saying, you're going to start violin when you're 3 and you are never going to quit and you're going to practice 3 hours a day. Like, that is not a good way to raise a polymath, by over directing and over scheduling and over committing them early. The best thing is to give them that sampling period I talked about earlier, where you let them try, you let them lead in terms of what they're interested in, and provide support, get even engaged, helping them with it. For example, a lot of the people I interviewed said like how they'd have a parent who would do with them, whatever they were interested in. So that helps. I will say though, some polymaths had more kind of dysfunctional households, drug abuse, marital problems, divorce, verbal abuse, poverty. There were polymaths I interviewed who were in households like that, and yet they still became polymaths. How did that happen? They didn't have a parent saying, hey, what do you want to learn about? Let me help you. Let me give it to you on a silver platter. They didn't have that. So sometimes having a difficult environment can kind of motivate. And maybe this wouldn't be with young children, but at a certain age, a person might realize, oh, I need to get myself out of a bad situation. Like, I need to make a better path for myself because I don't want this as my life for forever. And so sometimes people's way of getting their ticket out of this bad situation was to become polymathic, to learn a lot, get lots of tools in your toolkit, create lots of capability so you have options. And maybe this is too much, but the same was true with finances as well. Like, having lots of money could help someone become polymathic because it meant resources in school and seminars and travel and all these cool things. But for some people, having a lack of money encouraged their polymathy because it meant they couldn't outsource work or projects or skills to someone else because they couldn't afford to pay it. So they'd have to learn like how to fix a car or how to tile a bathroom or whatever it may have been. But back to your point, like, what can a parent do? Well, first, just be aware, like, regardless of how functional or dysfunctional or poor or rich you are, you can too have a child who becomes polymathic. But I would say, I mean, here's what I do. I've got a 4.5-year-old daughter, and my goal is to expose her to the world as much as I can. And then if she shows an interest or a capability in a certain area, to support that and nurture that. it's been a weird time, I will say, during the pandemic. A lot of what we did before, the different lessons and classes, you know, some of that has had to sit on the back burner, but hopefully when the pandemic's over, we can get back to that. But I think it's just, you know, allowing for that sampling period, not dictating or judging. Oh, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer. Don't do that. Like, don't do that to your kid. Don't give them that pressure. Encourage them to learn, give them access to books, give them access, you know, as it makes sense with parental supervision, right? Like to the internet, that's a great source of information and learning and growing. Take them to different places, let them meet different people from different cultures, you know, like expand their horizons is the point. And then let them pick what they're passionate about without dictating their path for them. Let them author their own story. One other thing I'll say on this is almost like philosophical or spiritual more than academic. But I had this realization, you know, when I became a mother, that my job as a mother is to help my daughter become herself, to not put my version of what I want her to be and not force that, but just to help elicit her inner authentic self. And to me, that's part of what unconditional love is that I accept who she is, you know. And I know people say, "Oh, what do you mean you accept? Like, what do you accept? Bad behavior?" I don't mean that. I just mean, like, at her core, at her essence, like, she is who she is, and I'm not going to try to make her into something that she's not. You know, I'm going to love her. Love is, you know, letting someone be who they are to some extent rather than trying to change them. I don't see how you could really love someone if you weren't appreciating who they are. That seems like something other than love. And I want to love my daughter because that's what parenting is, isn't it? Like sheltering and loving and providing support, helping her become her best self.
Absolutely. No, and I love the way how you talk about that, how you know, I've seen in different groups where people say, I want to be a polymath. How do I do that? And you know, the question kind of really threw me aback. And I said, well, it's not like something you want to be. It's something that you are. It's like a fish, you know, saying, oh, I want to be able to develop, you know, legs and walk on land. I think it's the reason why we're doing this live today is just so you can learn, if you identify yourself, to really accept yourself and almost like forgive yourself for not being the way everybody else is asking you to be.
Yeah.
And you can't just want to be a polymath because it's challenging, as Angela says. It's a polymath, in my opinion, is the same as an artist. I didn't think of myself as an artist until I realized I am, and that had a lot of potential problems for me because I realized that, you know, being a polymath, one of the challenges is distraction. And that's what artists have. Also, they get distracted like that. And I jokingly gave the example of Doris from Finding Nemo, but it's exactly that, you know, is keeping your focus is kind of tricky because there's something else that's going to take your attention. And it's not that you don't have the capacity to learn, is that something else is interesting. And I think I did read from your dissertation that Michelangelo didn't finish all his projects, and
right.
He alienated some of his sponsors because he just simply didn't finish.
Yep.
You know, so there's it's not easy. You're breaking relationships. You're having, you know, second thoughts about yourself because some things you just think that you went through everything that you needed to go through, and then you just want to move to something else. But you know, maybe not everybody agrees with that. And I wanted to see what you think about that, Angela. Has that happened to you?
Yeah. So I would say there are definite cons, downsides of being polymathic in the age of specialization or just in general, including, like you said, like other people may view you, or you may experience yourself as being sort of uncommitted or flighty or distracted. And there is a place for like getting stuff done, you know, and managing time and managing stress and distraction is all part of the experience of being polymathic. And it's not easy. They also frequently feel misunderstood. because they don't fit stereotypes. They don't fit in those tidy little boxes like society encourages us to do. It can also feel like, you know, if I share about myself, are people going to think I'm exaggerating or lying or bragging or any of that? And so there's some self-censorship that has to be done, and just navigating the social relationships. By the way, that group right there, that Facebook group, we talk about stuff like that in there. So if this resonates with you, come join us over at Polymath's Place on Facebook. So navigating the social landscape can be a challenge because we're in this age of specialization. Career choices, career changes, dealing with discrimination from organizations who want narrow specialists, and that's their paradigm, and they don't think more strategically about these types of things. You know, that can be difficult to navigate professionally. Some polymaths become entrepreneurs because making up your own gig and combining your interests can seem like a good option, because it can be difficult to work for an organization who only wants a part of you to fit in, you know, just fit in that box. But entrepreneurship has its own challenges and drawbacks too. The other thing I want to say is that, and this isn't exactly a con, but something you said earlier made me think, oh, I should point this out. Polymaths, if you meet a polymath, you will probably think, oh, this person is so capable, so competent. They come across as confident. They're obviously brave to try lots of new things. Like, they just seem like they've got their act together, right? A lot of them, we're like, maybe not. There's room for improvement over here. Yeah, but a lot of them mentioned this thing called imposter syndrome, which I didn't ask about. And a lot of them brought up this imposter syndrome because, you know, when you don't become like this one thing, this very narrow specialist expert, and that's what society pressures you to do, like, and you compare yourself to your peers who have done that, you can feel inferior, right? I don't think they need to feel inferior. I just think they need to see the perspective, like that both have benefit and merit and matter, and that they need to, you know, view their life as their art. You know, artists, a lot of art, you were talking about being an artist. Like, I think a lot of artists think about their modality, whether it's painting or dance or theater, whatever the art is. But a polymath, I would argue, views life itself as their art. Like, life is artistic expression. This is like an impromptu play here that we're all doing, you know? And so we have an opportunity, like a museum curator would curate a collection at the museum. We are all curating our lives to some extent. And yes, there's limitations and boundaries and financial concerns and real life and kids to juggle. And so it's not as if we just have a silver platter of unlimited options and it's easy. But at the end of the day, like, we are writing our own stories, like an author would write a book, you know, that's a kind of an art too. So I want to encourage people to, you know, I'll say this. We talked about the cons of polymathy. Here are the benefits of it.
Go ahead.
You get to feel a sense of freedom, of expansiveness, like of being yourself, being authentic, authenticity, rather than kind of squishing into that box that society wants you to fit in. Creativity that can come from having lots of tools in your toolkit, from making unique combinations, from doing analogical thinking, applying ways of thinking from one domain to another. So creativity and innovation is a big one. A sense of being brave, you know, that's got to feel good, living outside the box. Another real nice perk of being polymathic is because you've had lots of experiences and exposure. It makes it easier in some ways to find common ground with other people. You can find something to talk about usually, as opposed to if you were a very narrow specialist, you might struggle in that regard. When you have a problem, you've got all these toolkit, and you're a good learner. You're good at learning. So even if you don't have the answer in your toolkit, you can figure it out. You're adaptive, and you can pivot, and you can learn many learnings. That's what it means. And then, you know, I think feeling unique is kind of cool too. Like, you have this unique hodgepodge combination of experiences and exposure, whether professionally or otherwise. And feeling like you're an original, which we all really are. Like, you will never exist again in all of the universe and all of time and the multiverse or whatever the heck it is. Like, you are unique. Each one of you watching this, you're unique. And so I hope you can appreciate how special it is to be this expression, of intelligence and consciousness and energy that you are. And polymathy is a way to tap into your authentic self and let it come out. Enjoy the journey.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Barry is also saying some things that are wonderful. He says, yoga and dancing or movement meditations help me to flow because it quiets the limbic system. So I think for us polymaths, doing something that grounds us, I think is even more important, because we can just go kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm. I bet some good water therapy would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Now that we can do that, I'm going to do my little plug as well. I'm going to put my group here. I'm a group, and this is going to be interesting because here it's in French. This one is in French, which, I have in different languages. This is a group in Facebook where I go more in depth into how I work with the water. And you may be interested in hearing that and learning, education or learning has to pass through healing before. Like if in order for you to learn something, you're kind of healing part of yourself. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Tell me more.
When I was a teacher at one of my, several hats. I worked at Berlitz School of Languages. And in order for me to make the message come through, which I was teaching English, Spanish, and Italian, some of the students were kind of like it was sometimes hard for them to understand, where I was trying to get at. So I realized that forcing the language and forcing the material on them wasn't working. Like I had to kind of concentrate on themselves, like on their soul, their personality, what they were going through in that day or in their lives. And when I got through that, and it was kind of like a door opened, then their learning could commence.
That makes sense.
So it's like teaching or learning has to pass by healing first.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got all these like traumas distracting you, or like you just had a difficult experience and then you're trying to learn without first processing this sort of blockage, yeah, that would definitely get in the way. I mean, I think this just underscores the need for like, we need to see our whole persons. We need, we're not one-dimensional cogs and wheels. We're complex, intelligent beings. And, we come in a package with lots of different parts and we're complicated and complex and then that's beautiful. And that's who we are. Like, let's accept who we are and tap into it and use it for good. Like use it to enjoy life, use it to help others, use it to not be fake and to explore the authentic, essence of who we really are.
Absolutely. I absolutely love it. Yeah. The way you express yourself, it's wonderful. And that's why I wanted to, for other folks, to get this relief, that I got when I found out, because I'm, in my 40s now, and I'm just having found out about this. That means there were 30 years prior of just saying, oh my God, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And part of me inside was enjoying the ride so much that I didn't want to stop, but the judgment was still there. So now having to not have that judgment and that helps me so much more, and to really, be who I am, accept who I am, and then share with other people. And that is thanks to me just kind of going around everywhere, finding about this group just kind of by accident, by chance.
Yeah.
And now that I can use it better in my work, I can just by talking to you, next time I hold a baby and, I put him in a bath, like this information that passed through me, it's going to help me be more grounded and pass this information, this healing part, which is so important to accept yourself, to love yourself first. And I know those words are so broad and generic, and I know they did make sense to me for a long time, but to just celebrate, all these different parts of yourself, say, okay, I'm a polymath or I'm a hyperception specialist, like you say, this is also good. but be able to own it so that you can go ahead and do what you do just with, I would say it with fierceness, you know?
Exactly. Like step into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you have this sort of awareness of like, oh, this is me, this is how I am, this is how I'm gonna be, then you can step into it and own it and leverage it and make it a powerful part of your human experience, rather than shrinking and feeling, oh, that's bad, I shouldn't be that. No, being polymathic is perfectly normal. There are lots of benefits of it. Lots of people are this way. Let's talk about it. Let's appreciate it. Let's understand it, rather than like rejecting ourselves for being polymathic. It just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. So, wonderful talk. Thank you so much. And Barry, thank you for coming and, you know, answering to all our questions. So you've been so participant. We'll send you an ebook. We'll send you one of Angela's ebooks.
Yeah. And I just want to say, hopefully this doesn't make Barry feel any less special. He may already have my dissertation. I don't know. Barry and I know each other. He's in my group and he showed up a bunch of meetups I've done. But for anyone who would like to read my dissertation, if you go to polymathsplace.com, you can fill out a form and get it for free.
Perfect.
And check out the YouTube channel and the Facebook group, Polymaths Place too.
Yes. We do that. The same thing, Polymaths Place. So I know I'm thankful. You know, I don't actually always boast that I'm talking to a doctor, but I think it's the first thesis that I've actually read that I'm excited about, because all the other theses before just sound just too hyper specialized. But this one really floated my boat, if we could say that. So if you guys are interested, you know, here you can speak with me, and then we can talk a little bit further about how I can help you heal, you know, your own experiences, how I can help you come into be more grounded and understand yourself, you know, through the medium of water, whether it's online or also here in presence in Merida. Go ahead and you can contact me here on my page. It's Vanessa Calfan. And also in YouTube, it's Vanessa's, I was going to call it Healing Waters, but it's Vanessa's Healing Water Medicine. Vanessa's Water Medicine on YouTube. I have several videos that you can watch in also different languages. And on the Facebook group, it's, as the French says, les spirituels intrépides. So that's intrepid spirituals, you know, which is, you know, one type of polymath. And also on my fan page is called New Life by Vanessa Calfan. And there you can get also more videos, different people that I will be interviewing as a polymath. You know, I'll be interviewing people in the water, people outside the water. Today we had somebody outside. We didn't have a siren today, but I'm so thankful for Angela for coming in with me today, and you know, taking this time to really reach out and tell, you know, whoever's listening today that you are special, and special is a good thing. Special is a good thing, but yeah, it needs a little practice. So you can come in and practice coming with me. You can practice come here with Angela. We're not mutually exclusive. You can work with either of us. We'll be glad to have you in either of our groups.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me, Vanessa. This was really fun.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. So we'll be seeing you very soon in the pursuit of the love of learning.
Awesome. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.